charging away.
Now we are live, and now people can hopefully hear us and they can see us and everything works out fine. So welcome to this channel, Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Anders.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you. I've seen your name before because you have been in the EOS ecosystem before. So I've seen your name thrown around. I don't know when the first time was, but it was early, or in the early EOS stages. So what's your background? Who are Brandon Lovejoy? Yeah, let's start there.
Cool. Yeah. My background, professionally speaking, is started off in radio and television broadcasting, and then I got into film production. I did film production for a while. I've always been a bit of a technologist, so really always fascinated with technology. That led me to tinker around quite a lot in Linux, or in the early days. I'm just big fan of open source community, and so after some years of doing different communications roles here and there, I found my way into blockchain. When Bitcoin started kind of attracting my attention.
What year was that when Bitcoin caught your attention?
I'm trying to pin that down in my brain right now. I think it was, I remember Bitcoin was $60, if that tells you.
It probably tells people that it was not last year, it was not the year before that either.
So I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
Something like that. 2011, 2012. And I had some, modest success with Bitcoin. I exited way too early with my modest, profits, and then traveled for a while, came back, and that's when I really started looking under the hood of blockchain technology to see more what was going on there. And that's when I discovered BitShares, which was Dan Larimer's first project. And
which is the first decentralized exchange that actually got some traction.
Right. Yeah. So I got really involved in BitShares, and you can go back and read all our zany conversations in the BitShares talk forums. That was quite an education, getting involved in all that. I've basically been following the string of Larimer projects up till this point, and so.
Which is why you have a voice shirt on you today as well.
So I was a delegate, delegate on BitShares, as it was called then, block producer, along with my friend Roadscape, and did that for a while, interviewed Dan Larimer and the whole crew. Then
I think we had a short lag here.
Really excited about that, and all that.
We had a short lag when you after you said that you interviewed Dan Larimer, so we asked back a few seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Interviewed Larimer in April 2015 as part of this. We called it the BitShares peer-to-peer tour, and that was a lot of fun. Got to interview a bunch of members of the community and the team, and then after that, just really followed the project until Steam started, and then I kind of migrated over to Steam. I'm always really interested in how blockchain can impact communities and can make a tangible impact in people's lives. and kind of get it out of the purely tech world and into the hands of everyday people. So Steam was a really interesting advancement on that front. And then we all know the trajectory with Steam and Hive, and we don't need to go into all that. But yeah, EOS.
And for, I mean, there could be people watching that actually got into blockchain from after the Steam period. And Steam was this, like, what can I say, like a blog portal where people could post content, people could read content. If you like or share the content, the creator of that content gets some kind of revenue. So you actually earn some tokens, and that is like, it had a lot of active users at one point. And the token value went up, and it was somewhat of a craze, and then well, stuff happened, and now it forked, and it's called Hive. And Steam is still there, but Hive is where all the people that was on Steam are right now. That's
a great summation. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, it's like, I feel like it's such a history, and they get lost in the details. But yeah, somewhere, before any of that happened, before Steam and Hive, I guess it was October of 2018, I joined the team at EOS Detroit as director of communications. So I had the pleasure to work with those guys and gals, and that was my gateway into EOS.io. I was kind of, to be honest, a little hesitant to get too involved in EOS.io because I was still pretty happy working on Steam, and but Rob asked me to come over, and so I jumped in as director of communications and did that for like a year and a half. I left EOS Detroit, I think it was October of 2019. No, it's May. No, I started in May of 2018, left in October of 2019. And yeah, so then I've just been kind of doing freelance writing stuff ever since, and relaxing a little bit after the crypto bear market destroyed me pretty hard. And
what kind of content are you working on when you write?
So I've been working with Crypto Writer, which is publishing on Voice, and I'm doing a series called Blocks Populi, which is basically a series trying to highlight the ways in which we can use blockchain for social impact. So talking about all the, it's really a wide range of issues that kind of end up getting mixed up in there. But yeah, essentially like blockchain and social impact is the main thrust of that.
Yeah, okay, so blockchain and social impact. I mean, it will impact in a lot of ways, and like from my perspective, NFTs is one of those that will impact people in a way they cannot imagine. And I'm actually writing an article about that. I started this morning, and it will probably be done in anything between 1 day and 2 months. That's probably how I work. I need to get focused, and then I do a lot of work, and then it gets hold or it gets published directly. But I started this morning. I was going to write a semi-short one, and it's already 2.5 pages long, so it will be a long one. Perhaps multiple pieces. But that's not what we are here. We are here to talk about you and you as an OIG. And OIG is these guys that run, well, they evaluate the teams that run the infrastructure of Wax. So they make sure that everyone that works on Wax that get paid from the inflation of the tokens, which means actually the token holders somehow actually pays them in a way we go down the line. So we need to make sure that they actually gain value from the people that are here. And that is the job that you are trying to apply for by this Office of Inspector Generals. So that's a summary for anyone listening that don't know what an OIG does for Wax. So what we talked about, you came in with Bitcoins and BitShares and Steemit and EOS, and now you're in Wax. What brought you here?
Yeah, Wax is just always been on my radar. It's one of the coolest sister chains in the EOS.io space. I really like the community. I think it has a real sense of identity. And there's just so many projects that are launching on Wax. So it's just a really vibrant place. I'm also, as somebody that's been involved in governance discussions since forever, as it pertains to DPoS, blockchain, delegated proof of stake. I'm really fascinated by the Office of Inspector General and interested in this kind of hybrid model for basically an office that can help guide the community in a direction that leads to like really positive outcomes. It's kind of like, I view the OIG as training wheels, essentially, like governance training wheels. As Wax kind of evolves towards a more decentralized system over time, that hopefully we'll see the stakeholders be completely in control of the network. In the meantime, I really enjoy that there's kind of a guiding hand, because I think it's difficult to go fully decentralized right off the bat. It tends to be a recipe for disaster, as we've seen in some other circumstances, especially with DPoS. Because with great power comes great responsibility, and people aren't always ready for what that looks like in reality. So
yeah, it's good to have like a force in the background that actually drives everyone forward, and then people can do like when you say that Wax are not fully decentralized, it's because the Wax team has a lot to say. They do the patches, they decide a little bit where we are heading. They have the majority of the tokens when they vote. They use this development fund that is used to actually help Wax grow. They use these tokens to vote, which means currently they have the majority of the votes, which means they decide who runs the chain, and they still have control of the EOS-IO contract. With that said, if they do something wrong, we can just take everything that happened and fork a new chain. So in one way we are centralized, in one way we can actually, all the producers or a few of them, anyone can actually do it, just take the code and create a new one. The only thing is we need to have the users to actually do something. And right. I don't think that will happen unless Wax do some major mistake, which it doesn't look like they are doing.
Right.
So
I mean, the interests are still very much aligned. I don't see any contradiction. As Dan Larimer famously remarked, and I'm paraphrasing, but the challenge is to develop systems that mature to decentralization rather than mature to centralization. And he also pointed out that everything starts out centralized as an idea in one person's mind. You get someone else involved, and it's very difficult to develop complex systems that are just completely self-governing by like a widely geographically dispersed group of people. So I see it. I don't see any contradiction. I see the role that the Wax is playing with the community is vital to long-term stability and success.
Yeah, especially since we have something called Wax Labs, which actually grants like funds to people that want to build things. They actually granted some funds for me to make all this happen with this new studio and everything. So that's why in the bottom here is actually powered by Wax Labs, and that is actually because I got a grant by it. And I said I didn't have to do it, but I said if I get this grant, I'm actually gonna promote that in the corner of my show. So I'm happy to do that because they support me, so I want to support them. But to an important question, what is Wax for you?
What is Wax? So it's a very wide open question.
Exactly.
Wax is a worldwide asset exchange. It's we've already covered a lot of what Wax is. It's one of the first iterations of DPoS, like blockchains in the EOS-IO world. It's a really vibrant, robust community so far, and I don't see any signs of that letting up. There's just a ton of killer projects happening, too many to even track most days. Yeah, it's an opportunity to experiment and explore NFTs because it's kind of custom geared toward NFTs or non-fungible tokens. And it's relatively low risk in that experimentation. I mean, there's tons of different projects and marketplaces going on. So I see it as a really cool sandbox for experimentation with NFTs, but also it's not just a sandbox, it's also a very solid framework for building something that could be an enterprise level solution for large players like we're seeing on the Wax advisory board, people like Marvel and Capcom and Street Fighter. So yeah, it's kind of got the best of both worlds. It's like plucky and fun and laid back, but also ready for the big leagues at the same time. So
yeah, and I agree, because I try to follow more projects, but I keep ending up spending most of my time in Wax because this is where it's the most fun.
yeah.
I love everything happening, and weeks moving forward, we pretty much have an NFT launch or sale each week until Christmas, and that is pretty crazy. Some weeks there will be multiple, and perhaps 1 or 2 weeks there will be nothing, but if we just average them out, there will be at least one per week until Christmas. And I don't think we are gonna stop there, because we just had a game released, announced. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. I just got access to a beta game of something on Steam that actually, when you play it, you actually get drops of NFTs on Wax. It's this indie game called Box Maze. They've had this in browser, and they have one on Steam as well. Pretty cool. So things are happening in the background, and people are actually building on Wax, which is lovely. And we have talked a little bit about governance, that you have actually been in governance in the BitShares, and then on Steemit, and then on EOS, because all of this has built systems, so you have some kind of experience. So what is governance in a blockchain sense for you?
Yeah, so I mean, just one brief point of clarity. I wasn't actually involved in governance so much on Steem. I kind of took a back seat on that one.
Smart.
And yeah, yeah. As it turns out, I kind of dodged a bullet there. But yeah, Steem, I mostly just focused on enjoying the platform and using it, which is great. What is governance? Well, I mean, it's an ancient problem, and I think it's very, with delegated proof of stake, which Wax is, we have an interesting kind of foundation. And it could go a lot of different ways. Let me see here. Like EOS tried to roll out a really ambitious constitution, but ultimately it was pretty unenforceable, and it got into some like pretty sticky territory. And so that was an interesting like case of the community trying to create this sort of like more subjective framework, but it proved to be pretty unenforceable and difficult. So then they reverted to like more of a code as law perspective. And I think that governance as it is on DPoS blockchains has a long ways to go. And that's exciting to me. And we're still learning how to take the best of what is objectively measurable and what is subjectively valued, and because I think both those things are important. I don't think well, DPoS isn't really built for pure objectivity. I mean, it relies on stake-based voting, and so yeah, I think it needs to be. I'm always looking at hybrid solutions that kind of take the best of both. Like a more of a, I don't want to use the word, but I will. More of a democratic or one person, one vote kind of thing, along with the stake-based, stake-weighted voting. I think hybrid models are really interesting to kind of try and minimize the influence that stake has just purely by itself, and temper that with what actual people, individuals kind of think. Yeah, governance is really just like the process of a community trying to figure out how to make agreements about which way to develop and which way to move forward, and do so with the least number of casualties, hopefully. And DPoS to me is set up for all sorts of great experiments that can happen. And the Wax Guild system with the Office of Inspector General is one such experiment, kind of an interesting way to create a framework where the community can agree on what they want to see from guilds or block producers, and then use that framework to evaluate block producers. It's something I always wanted to see on EOS, because with EOS, I mean, while the network is up and running and functional, it's difficult to evaluate block producers from the point of view of like what additional value are they bringing besides just signing transactions. So,
and people have tried to do that, just that no one really listens to it. I know that, I think it's Argentina or Costa Rica, one of the Latin block producers on EOS actually built one that is a smart contract where people can evaluate and give points to block producers. But that came out pretty late. Perhaps it would have been used if it came out in the start. People were actually starting to use it, but it came out, I think, like already after ADOS. So it's a long way in, less than a year ago. So I think it might have had more power like on Wax. What is positive is that Wax team has said that we will vote like after what the OIG evaluates, and that is kind of giving it power. So I think that's good. And a lot of the proxies on Wax, proxies are where you token holders delegate their votes. For anyone listening, delegate the votes so that proxy picks the teams instead of you having to evaluate all the teams all the time. So you evaluate the proxy, and they follow pretty much, but they have some differentiator, which I think is good. You have to make some manual decisions. They're subjective as well. And when we're talking about guilds on Wax, what should a guild on Wax do, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing is validating transactions in the network and making sure they have like a robust infrastructure that can handle everything. All the validators, the guilds are also essentially like security teams, so it's really important that they are keeping up on the latest security measures and always thinking ahead in that regard. And then beyond the sort of technical side, I think I always see guilds as kind of community incubators of sorts. And as we're talking about governance, I mean, it's the guilds that, while they're striving to meet the criteria set by the OIG, I hope it's kind of a full circle. I hope it's I think that the guilds have a responsibility to kind of set the bar in terms of what they want to see. I mean, as representatives, really important representatives of the community, they're essentially responsible for leading by example and showing what is possible for a guild to achieve, and that can look like developing tools for onboarding or events, or just all sorts of different things that are a little bit more subjective, and then building tools that are really useful. What you're doing, this kind of creating podcast, creating ways for people to interact, I think is really huge, because at the end of the day, if everyone just reads the OIG criteria and then goes into a cave and tries to like check off boxes, and that's the end of the conversation. I think that's kind of a failure. Like it needs to be the guilds need to be having feedback, and the whole conversation needs to evolve to a point where maybe the OIG isn't even necessary at some point, where the kind of culture creates the values that we want to see moving forward. The bar is so high that there's no way to slide back to a point where you've got guilds that are not providing exceptional value to the network. Yeah, there's so many ways for guilds to show up, and I think we've not really seen the extent of what that could be. There's so many different, whenever there's a need or a problem, it's an opportunity for a guild to step up and solve it. So
yeah, I think it's a good and a good answer. How can we, like, when it comes to guilds, when we have some kind of metric, we need to measure something. It's easy that it puts us in the same place as the school system, where everyone is evaluated for the same thing in the same way, even though we are individuals. There are exceptions where some teachers are actually great at finding individual tasks for students, which help everyone grow and learn in a better way and more deep way. At least that's from my perspective. How can we evaluate teams in a good way when we have different teams? Like Pink Network has built Atomic Hub and Atomic Assets. We have EOS Cafe Block has built Blocks, one of the most foundational assets in the whole EOS IO ecosystem. We have EOS DAC, which is running this decentralized organization. And they are launching a game in the system. And then we have a team like us that run a high scalable API system, and we run these community incentives and things like that. How can we rank and evaluate these teams? Because the more teams we have, the better this kind of system needs to be, because we get paid more in the top 21 than we get if we go down as a standby.
Right. Yeah. It's actually something I was I don't know the answer to this in a lot of ways. I think this has got to be an ongoing question, especially when you've got, like some of the guilds you've mentioned have made such epic contributions to, to the system. And I wonder, how the community will decide to address stuff like this over time. I mean, do you have guilds that are just like permanently like locked in a position, and are you happy with that because they've contributed really foundational tools? Or do you like decay the value of some of those major contributions over time so that they don't constitute like an undue amount of like influence, because an amazing team could kind of rest on their laurels and kind of get lax after they could just rest on their accomplishments. So I don't think you want to incentivize for that. And I don't know the answer, but I think what I think may be a part of the solution to that is figuring out how to get the worker proposal system up and functioning in a way that can kind of take the burden of, like, say a team creates an amazing tool for the community, but it requires like consistent upkeep and energy and money to be directed to keep it running over time. Is that something that should be purely coming out of block producer rewards if the value of it decays over time, or should the worker proposal system step up and kind of recognize that certain things are so important to the community that it should help underwrite some of these services? So I don't know. It's a great question, and in terms of evaluation, just across the board, I just think that different guilds bring completely different, teams are teams of people can come up with the most unexpected and cool solutions to things. And I wouldn't want to see a situation where the network became stagnant with block producers that kind of just had it phoned in. So I think leaving room for like young and hungry upstarts, to continue providing value to the network is really important. How that actually works when it comes down to the framework for the criteria and the point system and everything is a whole other conversation. I look forward to the opportunity to have with the other IGs and see, and the community in general, and see how we can.
And I think it's good because I'm not sure that you actually need to have an answer on this question. You just need to have questions and keep not being satisfied with things. I think that is very important to keep evaluating and keep moving forward. And as you say, someone has built something one time that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. There might be some sense in having a decay on that compared to someone that keeps building and keeps producing things. Perhaps not. I mean, that one thing can add more value than someone that keeps working on small things. But that's up to the community. So I think that's a good approach that you mentioned there. That there's this kind of questions we have. And now to two hypothetical questions. So these don't really have anything to do with the WAX OIG, because OIG are here to evaluate the guilds. But these give some kind of idea how you see the decentralization and blockchain in general. So it might give a voter an idea of who you are, or what's your moral standpoint, or how you see different problems that could emerge. So the number one, a scammer on Wax gets hold of a lot of an account or keys or whatever with a lot of NFTs or Wax. What should we as a blockchain community do about that?
Yeah, that is a fundamental question. I think it's a real slippery slope when you start. Okay, well, I mean, you have to ask, like, how did it happen? Where is the security vulnerability? Like, is it the result of a smart contract that had a bug in it? Did somebody was somebody sloppy with their private keys? I don't know that when you start rolling back transactions, you get into like a really it's not something you want to do, and it's certainly not something you want to do lightly. And we've seen major blowback from this, as we did with. And just ask EOS New York about how that went down on
Or Ethereum, where the DAO, the DAO hack or whatever they call it.
Right. This has led to forks, and it's created just the most contentious situations imaginable. So I would say, in general, avoid at all costs rolling back transactions, unless you have just like some completely bulletproof compliance system where you're you've anticipated the exact situation, and it's been very well communicated or something like that. But until we reach that point, I would say like it's better to just learn from the damage and improve the code and improve security and figure out, use it as an opportunity to figure out where your weak spots are. And
yeah, good answer. And I don't think there's a correct or a answer here. It's a lot of use, and every type of action you can have some kind of downside. No action has a downside, and an action has a downside. So that's why it shows how you think about it. So I think it's a good question. The other one is, a person comes to Wax ecosystem, buys a lot of RAM and start to mint a lot of NFTs. Is like this crap NFTs, and what happens is that we get a lot of transactions minting NFTs, perhaps large transactions, and we also have a lot of RAM being used for this spam, essentially. Just keep spamming NFTs all the time. As a community, what should we do about this? Is this a problem? Is this nothing we should worry about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess on Wax, you don't really have there's not really like a resource exchange in the same way that there is on EOS currently. So it would be very costly. It would be a very costly attack if it was just a attempt to saturate the network with resource, overwhelm with resource usage. I think at that point you got to start looking. I mean, if it's worth it for an attacker to like spend that much money to secure those resources, then you might need to just take a cue from all the pain and suffering that EOS has gone through and begin looking at adopting. I mean, they've already pioneered to a large extent a new resource model, the rent BW system. So I would look to other examples in EOS.io networks that have faced similar things and consider adopting. And I don't know if you could, I don't know how responsive that solution is to like the immediacy of an attack on the network. So there may be something more imminent that needs to be done, but I might be a little out of my technical depth in this one, but yeah, I'd say like overall though, I don't think that's as much of a problem on Wax, simply because there's no cheap resources available. So
yeah, what it would happen is that the price of RAM would go up, so other people would have to pay more for what they pay less for now. But as you and one thing that people need to understand about RAM is scarce now, but it can be added more because a server that block producers run or guilds on Wax, they are not limited to the amount of RAM that are limited on Wax right now. There are more available. We can always add more RAM to the servers. It might have to change some other parts, but it's always possible. And if that is the case, the teams will earn more money, so they will be able to afford that. So there's always a way forward. So that's good. And then as we go out, because you have answered a lot of questions about the OIG now, but we have one final question, and that is, what is the coolest thing about NFTs for you?
Oh man, I don't think we've seen the coolest thing yet. I think there's so many different possibilities for NFTs that have not even been unleashed on the world. One of the coolest things I could imagine doing with an NFT is kind of like, I always wanted to see NFTs and augmented reality. So like treasure hunts and stuff. So you could go out and find NFTs, or and people could collect NFTs out in the world, which satisfies another need that I have, which is to see people just get out away from the computer, myself included. So just creating some way to use digital tokens to get people like running around the world and meeting each other would be really cool. And then yeah, even using NFTs to trade in for actual physical artwork would be cool. Like if I had an original piece of art and I made a limited NFT release of like 100 100 copies of that art, I think it would be really cool to let the people that acquired the NFT, like it would give them a right to acquire the original. And then you can make that into a game, or it could play out any way you wanted it to. So
yeah, I really like the augmented part. I mean, how Pokemon Go took the world by storm, I would love if you actually run around and caught any Pokemons that are NFTs that you can actually trade and sell and take outside and perhaps import into another Pokemon game, because that is what can happen. Or not even just a Pokemon game, you can take them out and import them in a complete other game, which is a little bit what IP holders are scared about, but what they should be amazed about. But that's because this creates a collaboration in a way that hasn't been done before.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah. Do you have any like words, anything you want to end with today? Something you feel like you want to mention before we end this?
Yeah. Yeah. Just that I think that there's a great opportunity. I'm excited at the prospect of serving in the OIG. I think I'd bring a lot of value to the office. In no small part, just because I'm an independent candidate. I have I'm relatively unbiased in terms of what's going on in the ecosystem. I'm motivated more by a sense of just kind of the love of improving governance and helping to evolve the systems that we're evolving, to meet the needs of these distributed networks. So for me, I'm just kind of in it. I'm in it for the love, and I don't really have a horse in this game, so I'm not trying to, I'm not playing for any advantage of any kind. I really enjoy this community, and I enjoy the work of the difficult work of trying to figure out governance and communications. I'd like to see more improved communications with the OIG and the community, and I think I can make a big impact there. So I'm really happy for your support if you deem me worthy of the office. And yeah, Anders, thanks for having me on today. It's been great chatting with you, and I always appreciate your show. So
yeah, thanks for coming on, and I hope people find any use of this, get to know you a little bit better, evaluate all the teams, and I really think anyone on Wax that has some staked tokens, go to oig.wax.io, log in and vote for one of the candidates. Yeah. Pick them based on their images, based on their text, interviews. There's more information. Just participate, be one of the users that actually participate in the governance and use your voice. So that's all for today. Hope you guys have a great time, and see you all soon.
Thanks a lot. Have a good